The smartest person in the room suddenly spills coffee all over their clothes. And strangely, instead of thinking less of them, you may actually like them more. Psychologists have a name for this. It is called the Pratfall Effect, and it reveals something surprising about how admiration and connection work. In 1966, social psychologist Elliot Aronson designed a simple experiment. Participants listened to recordings of a man answering difficult quiz questions. In one version, the man sounded exceptionally intelligent. He answered about 92% of the questions correctly and casually mentioned achievements that made him seem highly accomplished. In another recording, the man was far less impressive. He answered only around 30% correctly and came across as completely average. Then, Aronson created another version of each recording. Near the end, listeners suddenly heard cups moving and a small commotion. The man reacted with embarrassment and announced that he had accidentally spilled coffee over his new suit. Nothing dramatic, just one awkward human mistake. After hearing the recordings, participants were asked how much they liked the person. You might expect the flawless, highly competent man to win. He did not. The intelligent man who spilled the coffee was rated as more likable than the intelligent man who remained perfectly composed. That tiny accident actually improved people's opinion of him. Why? Because perfection creates distance. When somebody appears endlessly polished, successful, intelligent, and controlled, we may admire them, but part of us struggles to relate to them. They begin to feel less like an ordinary person and more like an image. Then one small mistake breaks that image. Suddenly, the brilliant person looks human. They become easier to understand, easier to trust, and easier to connect with. The flaw does not erase their competence. It softens it. Instead of thinking, this person is untouchable, your brain quietly thinks, they're impressive, but they're also like me. And that changes everything. But there is an important detail people often leave out when they talk about the Pratfall Effect. The mistake only helped the person who was already impressive. When the average performer spilled coffee, participants liked him even less. The exact same mistake produced the opposite result. That means vulnerability alone is not what makes someone attractive. Something has to come first. Competence. The Pratfall Effect only works when people already have a reason to respect you. If someone has clearly demonstrated intelligence, skill, confidence, or ability, then a small mistake can make them seem warmer and more approachable. But if someone already appears incapable and then makes another mistake, the audience does not automatically interpret it as charming humanity. They may simply see it as further evidence that the person is struggling. That is the difference. A mistake on top of competence feels human. A mistake on top of incompetence feels confirming. So the lesson is not to deliberately embarrass yourself. And there is another reason for that. The mistake has to feel genuine. People are extremely sensitive to manufactured vulnerability. You have probably seen someone deliberately insult themselves so everyone else will reassure them. Or someone carefully tell an embarrassing story because they know it makes them appear humble and relatable. Sometimes you can feel the performance underneath it. And the moment vulnerability becomes a strategy, much of its power disappears. Fake humility creates the same problem as fake perfection. Both feel controlled. Both feel calculated. Both make people wonder what version of the person they are actually seeing. The original coffee spill worked because it sounded accidental. The intelligent man was not trying to become more likable. He simply made a mistake and became embarrassed by it. That lack of control made the moment believable. Real vulnerability does not announce itself. It happens. A famous example came during the 2013 Academy Awards when Jennifer Lawrence tripped while walking up the stairs to accept the Oscar for Best Actress. She had just reached one of the highest points possible in her profession. Then, in front of millions of people, she fell. Yet the moment did not destroy her image. For many people, it did the opposite. She had already proven her talent. The fall simply reminded everyone that beneath the fame, the gown, the cameras, and the award was an ordinary human being who could trip on a staircase. Her status created respect. The mistake created closeness. That is the balance the Pratfall Effect exposes. People usually do not want someone who appears completely flawless. Flawlessness can be impressive, but it can also be intimidating. We connect more easily with people who give us two things at the same time: something to admire and something to recognize in ourselves. This is why constantly trying to look perfect can actually work against you. You may think every mistake lowers your value, so you rehearse every sentence. You hide uncertainty. You avoid admitting when you do not know something. You polish every detail until there is almost nothing spontaneous left. And maybe people do admire the result. But admiration is not the same as connection. A person can look impressive from a distance and still feel impossible to approach. Small imperfections change that. Maybe you lose your train of thought for a second. Maybe you laugh at yourself after making a harmless mistake. Maybe you admit that something made you nervous. Maybe you say, I actually don't know. If people already know that you are capable, Moments like these usually do not destroy their respect. They can deepen it, because now they are not only seeing what you can do, they are seeing you. That is why the order matters. Show substance first. Let humanity appear naturally afterward. Trying to reverse the order rarely works. Vulnerability without anything underneath it can feel unstable. But vulnerability sitting on top of real competence feels safe. It tells people that you are confident enough not to hide every crack. And ironically, that confidence often makes you more appealing. The Pratfall Effect also reveals something deeper about social life. We spend enormous amounts of energy protecting images that other people never asked us to maintain. We imagine that being respected means never stumbling, never getting embarrassed, never saying the wrong thing, never spilling the coffee. But people rarely trust a surface that is completely smooth. They trust what feels real. The people we remember most are often not the ones who seemed perfect. They were good at what they did, but they were also comfortable enough to remain human while doing it. They could succeed without pretending they never struggled. They could be intelligent without needing to prove it every second. They could be respected without becoming unreachable. So the next time you make a harmless mistake in front of people, resist the urge to treat it like a disaster. If you have already shown them who you are and what you can do, the mistake may not lower you in their eyes at all. It may simply bring you closer. This is Vesper, because sometimes the thing that makes people finally connect with you is not another achievement. It is the moment they realize you are human too.